Yesterday, we celebrated a holiday on the Jewish calendar, a day for which there is no special service in synagogue, no unique observances mandated by the Shulchan Aruch, the traditional canon of Jewish law. Yesterday was Tu B'Av, the 15th day of the Hebrew month of Av. And we know from the Talmud that on the 15th day of Av, Jewish women in Jerusalem who did not have husbands would go into the vineyards and dance, and coincidentally, men who did not have wives so happened to find wives on that day. Tu B'Av can be understood in the broadest terms as a day of love, a Jewish version of Valentine's Day. The Talmud acknowledges that love is in the air on Tu B'Av, not only here on earth, but also at the same time in the heavens. Across Israel, restaurants offer special menus and hotels offer special rates to celebrate this special day of love. Jews that otherwise don't follow mitzvot or observe Shabbat or kashrut in any way connect to this holiday that basically has no rules whatsoever except to express love to those in our lives. In a religion so devoted to love, as mentioned this week, loving the Torah, loving God, loving Israel, loving our spouse, loving our children, each of these forms of love is legislated by the rabbinic tradition through expectations. Some of the expectations come in the form of a legal document, like ketubah, in the case of marriage. And some come in the form of a list, like the expectations set out by the rabbis in the Talmud, of what a parent should be expected to provide for his or her child: an education, a profession, a spouse, the ability to swim. You'll read it above the pool at the JCC on Olympic. The golden rule for community, ve'ahavta l're'echa kamocha, love our neighbor as we ourselves would like to be loved. So why isn't there a long list of halachic practices on Tu B'Av? Why don't we recite Hallel to express love for God? Why don't we dance with the Torah to express love for the Torah, like on Simchas Torah? Why isn't there a Seudah Mitzvah, a festive meal, to express love for family and community like we do so many times all throughout the year? Why isn't there mandated law, like special time with one's spouse to express love for a spouse like we do on Shabbat? This week's Parsha tells us at one point, Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, and you should love your God. And at the end of this Parsha tells us, Ki me'ahavat Adonai etchem. It's because God loves you that God observes the oath with the Jewish people. The Torah is telling us love is a relationship. It's a skill that needs to be practiced by both parties in every relationship. I'd suggest that the wisdom of the Torah and the Jewish tradition is that in one aspect, love cannot just be practiced once during the year. Love has to be an act practiced within the routine of one's life every day. It's not enough to express love once during the year for our spouses or our children or even our community. And perhaps that's why the Jewish people didn't develop an entire Hallmark industry for Tu B'Av. It's routines like the Modeh Ani, prayer in the morning, showing appreciation and gratitude for God, for life, and then the Shema practice before bed. Practices like Shabbat dinner together as a family or as a community as we practice. Practices like flowers or together time on Shabbat with one's partner. Birthday greetings, messages of Mazel Tov. These are the ways that we show that we care about people all throughout the year. My children are enrolled right now in an acting camp. And this week, the director of the play told them something that was so impactful that they came home and repeated it. This director, in all of her wisdom, she told them, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. And it sounded like it could be a quote out of the Talmud. Practice makes permanent. If we practice love during the year, clearly and intentionally, expressing our deepest emotions to the ones we hold dearest in life, then when our annual check-in arrives at Tu B'Av, we have absolutely nothing to worry about, for it will all come naturally. When the moon is brightest in the middle of the month on the 15th day, during the longest days of the hot summer, shining a spotlight on our relationships, on romance, on our family, on our community, the Hebrew calendar wants to illuminate the love that we practice all during the year. And in another aspect, the Jewish tradition is wise enough to set aside a single day devoted to love without further expectation, so that before the stress of the high holidays on our families, before the stress of the school year, before the stress of the darkness of winter, we have one day set aside to remind us that this entire endeavor of living is actually about love. Not about the laws of love or the prohibitions or the expectations or the legality, just one day set aside devoted to the idea of love. Because we all need such a check-in to reflect back. And if we start on Tu B'Av and reflect back that God forbid there is nobody in our lives that we love or who loves us, then we have all the time of Elul, a month of love, to try to correct that with the act of tshuva. Tu B'Av is not about cards or flowers. It's about personal reflection on love. It's about looking inside and seeing what we need and what we need to do better in the coming year. It's about recognizing before Slichot and Rosh Hashanah that the new year is coming, and we, like all people, should know that there's a caring support system for us this year, whether that be a person or people or a community like this one, who cares about each and every one of us. May we all know love and share love in the coming year. Happy Tu B'Av, Chag Sameach, Shabbat Shalom.